The air was hot and sticky as the group of adventurers trudged through the dense jungle, their boots sinking into the muddy ground with each step. They had been searching for the forgotten city for weeks, following a map that was said to lead to a hidden treasure beyond their wildest dreams. At the head of the group was a rugged, experienced explorer named Jack. He had been to every corner of the world and had a reputation for finding treasure where no one else could. His companions were a diverse group, each with their own motivations for joining the quest. There was Sarah, a brilliant archaeologist, and her assistant, a young man named Peter. There was also a burly mercenary named Marcus, who was in it for the money, and a mysterious woman named Sophia, who seemed to have her own secrets. As they pushed deeper into the jungle, Jack could sense the excitement growing within the group. They were getting close, he could feel it. The map had led them to a clearing in the jungle, where they found the entrance to a hidden cave. It was just as the legend had described, a small opening hidden behind a curtain of vines. "This is it," Jack said, his voice filled with anticipation. The entrance to the forgotten city. The group crowded around the opening, peering into the darkness. It was pitch black inside, and there was no telling what lay beyond. Jack pulled out a flashlight and shone it into the cave, revealing a narrow tunnel that seemed to stretch on forever. "We'll have to crawl through here," he said, his voice echoing in the confined space. "It's the only way to get to the city." Sarah let out a sigh of frustration. "This is going to be a tight fit," she said, eyeing the narrow tunnel with trepidation. But Jack was already crawling inside, his flashlight beam dancing ahead of him. The others followed, one by one, until they were all squeezed into the narrow space. It was a tight squeeze, but they managed to make their way through the tunnel without too much difficulty. After what felt like hours of crawling, they finally emerged into a large chamber. Jack shone his flashlight around, revealing a vast underground city. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before, a place that had been lost to time and forgotten by the world above. The city was filled with ancient ruins, crumbling buildings, and strange, otherworldly artifacts. Jack could see the excitement in his companions' eyes as they explored the city, their senses heightened by the thrill of discovery. But as they delved deeper into the city, they began to sense a creeping darkness. It was a feeling that Jack couldn't shake, a sense that something was not right. He could feel eyes watching them from the shadows, and a creeping sense of dread settled in the pit of his stomach. It wasn't long before they stumbled upon the source of their unease. In the center of the city, they found a large stone altar surrounded by a group of robed figures. They were chanting in a language that none of them could understand, their voices echoing through the city. As the adventurers watched in horror, they saw one of the figures sacrifice a human victim on the altar. It was a gruesome sight, and Jack knew that they had to get out of there as fast as possible. But as they turned to flee, they were confronted by a horde of undead creatures that seemed to rise from the very ground itself. They were surrounded, and Jack knew that their only chance was to fight their way out. The group fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and overwhelmed by the undead horde. Jack could see his companions falling one by one, and he knew that their chances of survival were slim. But just when all hope seemed lost, Sophia stepped forward. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal, which glowed with a bright, otherworldly light. She held it up above her head and spoke a strange incantation, and the undead creatures recoiled in fear. With the creatures distracted, Jack and the others were able to make a break for it. They ran as fast as they could, following the beam of Jack's flashlight through the winding streets of the city. They could hear the creatures chasing after them, their moans and growls echoing through the tunnels. But somehow, they managed to make it out of the city and back into the jungle. They collapsed on the ground, panting and covered in sweat and dirt. "What was that thing?" Marcus gasped, his eyes wide with fear. "I don't know," Jack said, shaking his head. "But I think we should leave this place far behind us." As they made their way back to civilization, they couldn't shake the feeling that they had just barely escaped a terrible fate. They vowed never to speak of the forgotten city again, and to take the secrets of what they had seen to their graves.